Hi guys, so in this video we're going to do exercise 3b and we are busy interpreting different graph questions. The first graph they're telling us in the picture is the f of x and they're saying it's 2 cos x plus 1. So there's the f and I know it is this graph. This is the f of x, 2 cos x plus 1. Next up we have the g of x and that one is sine of x. That's this one. And they're telling us the period for which both graphs are drawn is from 0 to 360 degrees. So if I insert this information in, I know that this is 0 degrees, and I know that where these two end, it's 360 degrees. Now they're saying that A is the y-intercept for F, that's that one, and C is the turning point for G. It also looks like a point of intersection. The graphs of F and G intersect at C, just like I said, and at 216,87 degrees. Question number 1. What is the period of G? The G of x is sine of x, normal sine of x, and we've got the period from start to start is 360 degrees. What is the amplitude of F? Amplitude is middle to the highest point, or middle to the lowest point. So if you recall the amplitude equation, we see that amplitude is going to be equal to half of maximum of y minus the minimum of y. Now the question is, what is the maximum of y? That is going to be our A, which is our y-intercept, right? So I know that my y-intercept is going to be at a point where x equals 0. So if I'm going to say 2 cos x plus 1, 2 cos of 0 degrees plus 1, cos of 0 degrees we know normally is going to be 1 plus 1. So 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1. That gives me 3. This means that point A is 3 on the y-axis. So my maximum of y is going to be 3. Now the question is, what is the minimum of y going to be? So my minimum of y is somewhere here. There's different ways of approaching this. I think the easiest way for you to do this is to look at your cos graph and do your pattern. So we know our cos pattern is 1, 0, minus 1, 0, 1. And we know that our lowest point is at minus 1. If I add my degrees onto this, this is 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees. This means that my lowest point is at 180 degrees. So now I can add that into my equation. 2 cos of 180 degrees plus 1 gives me 2 cos of 180, looking at the pattern, is negative 1 plus 1. So that's negative 2 plus 1, which gives me an answer of negative 1. So my minimum is going to be negative 1. And I'm subtracting the minimum, which ends up being an addition. So this ends up being a half of 3 plus 1, which gives me a half of 4, which means that my amplitude ends up being a total of 2. So amplitude for F is 2. What's very obvious for you to see is that X is not the middle point, right? We've now disclosed that this point here is actually negative 1. And the highest point is 3. What is the minimum value of F? We've just disclosed that. We said the minimum value of F is negative 1. Write down the coordinates of A. Coordinates are going to be X and Y values. The X value for A is 0 degrees and the Y value for A is 3. We just calculated that when we did the amplitude calculations. what is the range of f? So the range of f is, again, it's going to be the values of y that is applicable for this equation. So I like to sketch this on my graph, and I say, okay, if this is my maximum value for for the f, and this is my minimum value for the f, then everything above is not applicable, and everything below is not applicable. So my range goes from this point to this point, and I need to know those 2 points. Now I know that this bottom point is -1, and this top point is +3, and that is the range of f. What is the maximum value of h if the h of x is equal to 2 times the g of x minus 1? So this is an equation question, and what they're telling me is they're saying the h of x is equal to 2 times the g of x minus 1. Now I know the g of x is this green one, and the g of x is sine x. So instead of writing g of x here, I am substituting the equation sine x minus 1. Now I'm simply going to do basic algebra. I'm going to multiply that in. So I have 2 sine of x minus 1. That is the equation for the h of x. But this doesn't answer the question. The question is, what is the maximum value? So again, maximum and minimum, I first go to my pattern. My pattern for sine is 0, 1, 0, -1, 0. And my maximum is over here at 90 degrees. So to get the maximum, I am going to say the h of x is equal to 2 sine of 90 degrees minus 1. So that's 2 sine of 90 translates into 1. I know this from my pattern, minus 1. 2 times 1 is 2 minus 1 gives me 1. So the maximum value for 2 sine 90 minus 1 is +1. That's my answer. Next question, write down the equation of J if J is obtained by reflecting F about the x-axis and shifting it 2 units up. That's interesting. So they're telling us a couple of things are happening here. The first thing is the word reflection. So we know a reflection means it's a negative sign in front of the coefficient. So I am going to make that a negative sign over there. Then they are telling me shifting it 2 units up. So up means plus and 2. I add a +2 at the end, which means now I've got a new equation. I have the j of x is equal to -2 cos x. 1 + 2 is +3. And that is the answer to this question. The j of x is -2 cos x plus 3. Question number 8. They're asking for which values of x is the g of x greater than 0. So this is an interesting question. You need to be able to understand it. What you need to understand is at which point is y 0. Y is 0 right here on this x-axis. The x-axis is where y equals 0, right? So the question is, when is the g of x, the green graph, equal to 0? And that would be at this point, and at that point, and at that point. There are 3 points when the g of x is equal to 0. So question 8i, we would say the g of x equals 0 at 0 degrees at, so if you look at your pattern, remember your pattern for g of x is sine. So our pattern for sine is 0, 1, 0, -1, 0. And that's 0 degrees, 90, 180, 270, and 360. So this is very, very simple, because all that you're going to do is you're going to look for when y is 0. Y is 0 at 0 degrees. Y is 0 at 180 degrees. y0 at 360 degrees. The end.